What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here today, and I'm excited to give you some tips on your first regional experience. This may be your first regional and it may be feeling a bit daunting for you, or you just don't know what to expect. So in this video, I'm going to give you some tips that is going to help give you the most smooth experience that you can have. And I'll have time steps throughout the video, so that way you can refer back to at a later time if need to. It starts off with the preparation phase. And so in this case, you want to actually know how to play your deck well. Make sure you practice enough times. This could be with your friends, locals. Make sure you know common interactions or rulings or even your go-to plays. Just make sure that you know how to play your deck well. One thing to avoid though, do not make significant changes right before the event if you don't have appropriate time to actually test them out. This has happened to me and it's actually backfired horrendously. I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And it was my first regional ever as well. I was playing Agents at the time and I incorporated some new cards. Although since I was in college, I did not have enough time to actually play test that appropriately. As a result, during the rounds, my opponents would tell me to hurry up, or it felt like I was trying to figure out how to even play my deck during the rounds too. At the end of the day, I felt very frustrated and I basically learned from that I would never do that ever again. So I hope that's not your experience. Next tip is that you want to study relevant matchups. This is very important because you at least know what to expect when you're getting yourself into. And I recommend two to three. So that way, again, this is your first experience. You want to keep it simple for yourself. If you start accounting for 5, 6, 7 decks, all of a sudden your deck building doesn't work out. It becomes more complex and you start doubting yourself, and then your confidence going into the event isn't there really. So just focus on 2 to 3, practice, come up with a game plan on how to beat them as well. And so during the event, you can just execute your game plan. This may seem a no-brainer, but make sure you play with a deck that you'll enjoy. Why do I even say this? Sometimes we think about like the meta decks and we think about the fun deck that we want to play. And sometimes they do overlap, obviously, in certain cases, but not all the time. But if you play a deck that you really don't enjoy, you'll find yourself not enjoying the event overall. And in fact, you'll start doing bad decisions that will hurt your performance as well. In Cardfight Vanguard, this happened to me where years ago, I picked up a meta deck called Blade Wings. And as I took it to locals and I was playing throughout the rounds, I found out that I really didn't enjoy playing the deck. And then I found myself basically just wanting to get this over with. And some games took longer than they should have, or I lost games that I really shouldn't have as well. So make sure you play a deck that you'll enjoy. You may be asking yourself, why all this preparation? And it's mainly because of this. Your level of confidence is determined by the level of preparation that you do in your eyes. Let that sink in. It sounds like common sense, but if you really look back to, if you're not prepared as much, you're not really that confident. So let this be a reminder for you to just prepare enough in your eyes that you feel pretty good about yourself. Now for the week leading up to the tournament or even the weekend itself, you want to make sure you prepare mentally and physically to help you with your performance. Examples are like exercising, whether you go for a walk, go running, work out at the gym, do yoga, whatever it may be for you, find that for yourself. Physical activity actually helps with your mental health and it also strengthens your focus as well. So mentally going into the event, you're much stronger as well. Not to mention stamina for physical reasons when you have a long day to play it out. Another thing that helps me mentally is listening to topping players, whether it be deck profiles or maybe like interviews or other resources that I find. You can watch them on YouTube or search for them via Google and find something that you can listen to. It keeps you in the mode, and essentially once you go into the event, you're pretty much already in that mode and don't have to have much effort to switch gears essentially. Now, this typically happens on the day before. You may be tempted to cram last minute play testing. Now, since this is your first regional, this is normal because you're probably just nervous, don't know what to expect. So you're like, maybe I could get some games in to help with my easiness. That's perfectly fine for your first regional, but if this becomes a habit over time, this is typically a sign that you're not doing enough preparation weeks prior, essentially. This can cause a lot of stress, especially for future events, and you may not look forward to even participating in more events because you feel that it's stressful. A lot of this stress and pressure can be avoided early on if you just focus on preparing ahead of time, and so you don't last minute play test essentially. It's okay to skim through your plays or maybe have a game or two with a friend just to feel like freshed up essentially, but you shouldn't figure out how to like beat a whole entire metagame the night before essentially. Obviously that's outliers, but for most of us that's just stressful essentially. So again, avoid that stress and don't put that pressure on you. Eat healthy and sleep right before the event, and this is super crucial. You may have heard the expression, you are what you eat, and so if you eat well, you feel well. If you eat crap, you feel crappy. So it can work in either case. And so make sure that it works to your benefit. You can use like healthy salads, meal bars, especially during the day. Make sure you pack some healthy snacks too, some water. Make sure you stay hydrated as well, or any healthy alternatives as well. What's super helpful too to eliminate a lot of this stress from your mind is making a physical checklist or even a checklist on your phone. So that way you know you have your playmat, your deck, any sleeves that you need, counters, etc. Things that you need for the event, and you could just make sure you can go back to your list and just mark them off as you go. Now into the tournament itself and having a smooth experience. The first thing that I want you to realize is having positive and appropriate expectations. What do I mean by that? Of course, pretty much everybody wants to top at an event. Who doesn't, right? However, don't put that pressure pressure on you. Have a positive expectation that you can learn from this event, but also learn from it. So that way the following event or the following events, you'll be in a much better position to be actually topping, essentially. For all my super ambitious people, like, no, I gotta give it all. I gotta win. View this as practice for the next regional where you're gonna dominate. To help you eliminate some of the pressure too as well, just focus one game at a time. This is super crucial because you may start thinking about all the rounds in a Swiss format. So that could be anywhere from 7 to 10 rounds and then going into top 32, top 16, top 8, whatever it is. It seems like a lot, to be honest. And it is daunting when you think about it that way. But if you break it down with one game at a time, then you can give your 100% effort in each game, which will make your record. And if you have a winning record, congratulations, you make it into the top cut as well. But again, one game at a time. Everybody deals with this, something called round one jitters. So essentially right before the round one starts, you are just waiting for it to start, really. And it's like, you've already done this and now it's like, what are these jitters that I'm feeling? Find something that really helps you with those jitters. It could be maybe getting a game in with your friend or something, or maybe some encouragement, or maybe listening to music too, for you to get into that mode essentially. For me, I've learned this quote that actually helped me a lot. And the quote is, the feeling of nervousness and excitement are really the same feeling. They're just viewed differently. And so verbally, I'm able to tell myself that I'm excited, and all of a sudden using that positive affirmation, it's really giving me that short-term help that I really need to push through those jitters whenever that comes up. But make sure you find something that helps you. Now to touch on simple tournament etiquette, this can be its whole video as well, but I'm gonna give you some simple things to focus on. Whenever you sit down with your opponent, you just want to make sure that it's a good ambience and a good line of communication. And so what I recommend is just use small talk. Sometimes we see that as like unnecessary or useless, but really that can help you break down those invisible walls that sometimes you and your opponent may have. Again, you may face somebody that you don't know, more than likely, and both of you are wanting to win that round. Some easy questions are like, hey, how's it going today? Where did you guys travel from? What's some crazy matchups that you had today? It just opens the line of communication, so that way you have the best experience and you can make a friend out of that. But at the same time, this also leads to smooth technical play later down the line too. So for example, you want to make sure announce the skills or effects that you're using on the typical cards that you're playing. So that way your opponent knows that you're playing a certain card or a certain play. And you may ask like, do I need to explain everything, or do I go just like, hey, activate this card's effect or activate this card's effect? Your opponent would just say like, yeah, I know that card. That's fine. Keep going. This is also important in Yu-Gi-Oh too with phases, such as like draw phase, standby phase, main phase, all key components essentially. For card 5 Vanguard, it's best to talk about like auto skills, especially pointing it out like, oh, break strike skill or do this skill when I attack. And you may be asking yourself, what if your opponent doesn't like reciprocate the same vibe that you have? Maybe they're just kind of like to themselves, or maybe they're just flat out rude. Don't push it too much, just let them be at that point. But this can also already line you up in your mindset that you may have to call a judge soon later on, depending on their behavior or some interaction that causes the judging. Which leads me to one of the biggest questions that people want to know is that, when do I call a judge? Most importantly, the judges are there to make sure that the event goes smoothly as possible, especially for you and me as players as well. Just to have a mindset that they're to help the situation, to make sure it's smoothed out and appropriately handled. If you and your opponent have a disagreement, or maybe just question an interaction, just call a judge. It's better to be safe than sorry. Things such as illegal game state can happen too, but also have the mindset to give grace. We are human, so we genuinely can make mistakes. Not everybody there is there to rule shark you. We've heard horror stories about that too. But again, if you can advocate you and a judge to possibly have a reversible game state to make sure things are back lined up without any warnings, without any game losses being issued or anything like that, that's like the best case scenario. So always give the benefit of the doubt, but also just be aware of the current situation and let the judge really dictate what happens moving forward. A quick story, I had this back in G era with Night Rose. Essentially, I had the mirror. My opponent essentially used Rampage Shade to go into Soul, but forgot to draw. Then they proceeded with the triple drive, and we stopped at that point. We're like, hey, I think the draw is mandatory. And we found out that it was, and we called a judge and we resolved it. And it was pretty much like, hey, that first drive check, let's pretend that's your draw. And then the next card, the fourth card, would be the third drive check essentially. So it was something that was fixable essentially too. And my opponent still had a great time overall. And so even when a judge happens, that doesn't ruin the experience or any relationships that you have with somebody, like with your opponent. The important thing is that it got resolved appropriately and both players are in agreement. A few more tips on when to call a judge too. If you suspect some form of slow play too, like, you know, let your opponent know like, hey, I'm thinking about something. That's why those open lines of communication help a lot, because then your opponent can mention what they're thinking about and why they're taking so long on a specific play. But also this lets you know if there is slow play happening. And again, call a judge if you feel like slow play is happening, and the judge can assess that while you're focused on playing your game. This is very crucial, especially in certain tournaments such as like Card 5 Vanguard, where they have the double loss rule in Swiss rounds. If the extra time already runs out, both players automatically lose, regardless of situation. So it can have that mentality where like, if I'm going down, then I'm taking you down with me. So make sure you call a judge when you feel slow play is an issue. The one thing that I want to re-emphasize is that it's better to call a judge and not later regret it where you should have, essentially. There's numerous stories I've heard with other players, and even including myself, where I reflected at the end of the tournament and thought to myself, yeah, they messed that up. Yeah, wow, we should have called the judge then. Wow, that cost me the game because of that. And now you're just in this situation of like, wow. And sometimes we need that to learn from that as well. But if you can avoid it and know ahead of time, better for you. Again, it's all about a smooth experience for your first regional. This is also just important, but after the tournament, you wanna make sure you have time to reflect yourself and about your performance as well. There are 3 crucial questions that I want you to ask yourself. What did I do well? How can I improve? What could I have done different to win in that scenario? If you ask yourself these questions, whether you're driving back home or maybe yourself or even mentally, your brain will give you all the answers in order to improve as a player. Not only you improve as a player as a skill set, but also just your experience overall for the next event too. I wouldn't encourage a question such as like, what did I do wrong? Because then you get the list of reasons that you just messed up. Then you'll have to follow up with a question like, how can I get better or how can I improve anyway? So just skip that question and just ask yourself, what did I do well? How can I improve? What could I have done different to win? And that's going to get you very far very quickly too. If you have the opportunity, talk to this experience with your friends, whether they're at the events or not. Constructive feedback is super crucial. Not just any feedback, like if you told somebody like I messed up on this play because I thought of X reason, a response something like, wow, you did messed up. Oh, you should have known better. What's wrong with you? Why did you did that play? Like that doesn't help anybody for real. In fact, you might get mad after that. You make sure you want to get constructive feedback that actually is useful. Like, did you use this card because you thought he had this card in hand? Or did you do this play because you thought you had it in the bag? And some of your friends may even say like, wow, I actually did that in my first regional, or I actually did this last week. So I feel where you're coming from. Constructive feedback will take you long ways for sure, especially from people that genuinely care about you and your performance as well. And the last step is plan for the next one already. You have experience now. Now to get better at having more experiences is literally just going to more and just, take it step by step, enjoy the journey as well. This can be in different TCGs. It doesn't have to be one specific one. I purposely gave examples in 2 different instances throughout the video as well. And again, just have fun and enjoy it. Also, what's one tip if you're an experienced player already that you would give to a person that's yet to experience their first one? Comment down below in the pinned thread as well. If you found this video of value, please leave a like and subscribe. And then of course, share it to somebody that you think will help give value to them as well. Till next time, amigos. Bye.